So next up, we have someone from the diaspora community coming up for a talk. And I just wanted to do like a bit of a check. How many people here are from the Pakistani diaspora community? How many people have come from abroad for this conference? Could you stand up, please? But you have Pakistani roots. Could you stand up, please? I see a couple of people like hesitating to stand up. Just stand up. I was also born abroad, and I. So just stand up, yeah. Okay, so you guys have a mission. You know Atif Awan, who came on stage earlier and spoke in Indus Valley Capital. He raised seed funding for airlift. You have to corner him outside and ask him how you can also find an Usman Gul to invest in. Seems like a good mission, right? Right? Okay. So our next speaker, also from the diaspora community, is mission-driven. She cares deeply about technology for civic good. Sheba Najmi is the founder and executive director of Code for Pakistan. She is responsible for holding the first hackathon in Pakistan, right? And I think, by laying those seeds in 2012, 2013, she really sowed the seeds for an ecosystem that's civic conscious. Sheba currently is a senior designer at LinkedIn. She spent many years doing user experience design at Yahoo. Please welcome on the stage, Sheba Najmi, who's come all the way from San Francisco.
Thank you, Sahar. Is this working yet? Yeah, okay. Thank you, Sahar, and thank you, Jahan and the Nest team for having me. As Sahar mentioned, I've been practicing user experience design in Silicon Valley for about 17 years, and I'm also an entrepreneur in the nonprofit civic technology world. And to me, that blend makes perfect sense because as technologists, we're all humanists first, because the problems we're solving are all about human beings, they're not about technology. I grew up in Karachi on the other side of the Clifton Bridge, and when I was growing up, my father would send me to stand in line at the post office or to pay electricity bills because the ladies' line was always shorter than the men's line. Having said that, I witnessed over and over again just how painful and tedious it was to interact with any kind of government service, and it certainly didn't feel like a service. This is not unique to Pakistan. Wherever we live at least two lives with a huge discrepancy between them. Our private sector lives and our public sector lives. And most of the innovation happens in the private sector. Clearly, banking has come a long way. So about 10 years ago, we used to experience banking like this. Now, banking can happen anywhere. We're now used to services meeting us where we are. But it's easy to see that government hasn't kept up. This is the line outside the Department of Motor Vehicles in Los Angeles. Let me share a story from Port Elizabeth, South Africa. In 2009, the city purchased 60 buses to introduce a new rapid bus transit system. And they also upgraded the city's road infrastructure in order to accommodate those buses. And the whole project cost $130 million. Okay. Now, 10 years later, those buses are still parked and not in use because they're simply too big for the lanes that they're meant to drive in. Now think about that. How does a $130 million project fail so fundamentally? Here's another example from the city of Boston, where the city has installed these two public parklets. These are small public areas where people can sit and have coffee or have a chat with somebody, and they cost about $25,000 each. And no one ever sits there. Well, can you guess why they failed? I mean, I look at those benches, and they don't seem very comfortable to sit on. They're curved in shape, and they're right next to street traffic. You can't really sit on that and have a conversation with someone. And there are many, many stories like these all around the world, and these things are, of course, ridiculous and painful for people, and they damage trust in government. But why do projects fail in practice? Projects fail when we build without understanding the full context of needs and usage, and when we design solutions without input from the stakeholders whose ownership is critical to the long-term success of the project, and when we build things without testing them first. So contrast the Boston parklets with the parklets in the city of San Francisco, where I live. In San Francisco, The city has put up 50 parklets all over, and they're extremely popular. So what was the difference between San Francisco's parklets and Boston's? Well, in San Francisco, they're doing two things. One, they're actually involving the local neighbors and local business owners as participants in the design process. And two, they're prototyping using temporary parts that can be used to create low-cost solutions and can be easily adapted based on user feedback. It really doesn't take much time or resources to prototype and test solutions. So they just put in enough coins to take over a metered parking spot for 2 hours, and they learn a lot. I bet that if in Boston they had involved the locals to gather these materials and choose their locations and create these public parklets, they would have created solutions that were a fraction of the time and cost and much, much more successful. So you have to lead with people, not problems. I'm going to say that again, because this is something really, really critical here. You have to lead with people, not problems. How do you do that? It's twofold. One, in order to create solutions that actually bridge the gap between the creators and the users, or between government and citizens, you have to focus on user needs to create the solutions in a user-centered way. And two, you need participation from active, engaged, smart users. In the user experience world, we call these design thinking and participatory design. Let me share two stories of my own personal experience of what this actually looks like in practice. And so 8 years ago, I took a year off work, and I joined Code for America, which does a public service fellowship program in which they partner technologists with city governments to try to understand the needs of citizens and create web and mobile applications that meet those needs. We have access to a way of thinking and technical skills and design skills that are not generally present in government. You need technologists working with government to make government work. And so when the year started, I was partnered with the City and County of Honolulu along with 2 other fellows, and we conducted about 50 needs-finding interviews with all of the city departments and with community organizations and with citizens, and what we found was that it was really hard for people to get access to city information. How many of you have ever visited a government website? Great. So like with most government websites, citizens were extremely frustrated because they couldn't understand the information on the website. They just couldn't make sense of it. It was just pages and pages of obscure legalese of what the government wanted to be telling citizens, not what citizens were trying to find out. Now, the city's website was a massive thing of 30,000 pages, and it was not going to be possible for the 3 of us to re-architect and create content for all of that website in the few months that we had. So instead, we built a parallel website that better conformed to the way citizens are actually looking for information. And so we created a super simple website called Honolulu Answers, which is anchored around search. And you can enter in a search term or a question like, how do I renew my driver's license? And you get back an answer that is written in plain and simple language. It tells you, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to bring, this is where you need to go. Boom. This is what citizens are looking for. Well, the website itself was easy enough to build, but then we were faced with the problem of how we were going to populate all of the content for the website. It would have taken the 3 of us a very, very long time to do. So then we did something that was pretty radical, especially when you think about how government is used to working. So we asked citizens to actually write the content. We figured if we're creating a citizen-focused website, then why not actually involve citizens in co-creating it? So we held a write-a-thon where we invited the public to gather for a few hours, and they researched and wrote answers to all of the frequently asked questions. But I think more importantly than that, we created a new way for citizens to participate in their government that was inclusive. So there were people who came from all kinds of backgrounds. There were older people, there were writers, there were geeks, a blind resident came. And they researched and they wrote answers. And we attributed the answers to the people who wrote them, which was sort of the equivalent of having a bench named after you in civic tech infrastructure. People were so engaged, they wanted to take more questions home to research and write answers to. It's hard to articulate the sense of empowerment and responsibility that people felt for their city based solely on this small act of participation. There were also 15 city employees who came on their own time on the weekend, including the mayor, all dressed up. And so not only were we seeing citizen engagement, but we were seeing the city employees explaining things to citizens in plain language from the citizens' perspective, and you could see their mindset shifting. We were witnessing government being more open and collaborative. Now, this was a pretty cool story in and of itself, but it got even better. On the National Day of Civic Hacking the following year, the Code for America Fellowship team in the city of Oakland took the open source code base of Honolulu Answers and they turned it into Oakland Answers. And they again held a write-a-thon where they invited the public to come in and research and write answers to the frequently asked questions. And again, we heard about the sense of responsibility that people felt towards their city. This is co-creation. This is participatory design. This is people making their city smarter. This is what we call civic hacking, which is the act of fixing civic problems. Since Honolulu Answers is open source, it has now been redeployed in a dozen cities around the world, along with the write-a-thon. And by piecing together these small acts of participation that we're enabling through civic hacking, we can slowly re-energize citizenship and restore trust in government in a new 21st century way. So again, this is a story about the user-centered design process that is participatory and how that can actually start to change the relationship between government and citizens. 6.5 years ago, I founded Code for Pakistan. We do a number of things. We run civic innovation labs in different cities that engage both the community and the government. And our flagship program is a fellowship program that we run in partnership with the KP government and the World Bank. There are 20 full-time fellows who spend 6 months partnered with various government departments using the user-centered design process and agile methodologies to create solutions. Here's an example of one of the kinds of solutions and the projects that the fellows undertake. So in the KP province, traffic is a big problem, especially in Peshawar. There are about 250,000 registered vehicles with only 3,000 traffic wardens to manage them. People are continually frustrated daily because of traffic jams and traffic violations. So when our fellowship team first met with the KP traffic department, they learned that the department was completely inundated with incoming requests to verify licenses and challans. In fact, they were spending all their time responding to those inquiries rather than actually being able to deliver services, like creating and renewing driver's licenses. And so the fellows followed the user-centered design process, and they did a lot of user research, and what they learned was that citizens wanted a smartphone-based application where they could not only track their status of their traffic tickets, but they could also lodge complaints against traffic wardens. And then they also did user research with the government departments, with everybody in the traffic department, from the traffic wardens to the person doing data entry to the head of the department. And based on all this user research, here's a video of what the solution was that they built. Could we cue up the video, please?
राब्ता ऐप से लोगों को बहुत सहूलत मिली है। इसमें हमने लाइसेंस प्रोसीजर और ड्राइविंग टेस्ट का मॉड्यूल रखा हुआ है। उससे वो लर्न भी कर सकते हैं, उससे प्रैक्टिस भी कर सकते हैं।
This app not only allows the public to file a complaint against the traffic violations, but also enables them to track the status of their traffic tickets and educates them about the traffic rules.
रूट अपडेट्स भी दिए गए हैं और से आप किसी भी वक्त किसी भी रूट की स्टेटस आप देख सकते हैं कि वहाँ पे रश है, जाम है, कोई मसला तो नहीं।
So far, the app has brought the transparency to the ticketing system, and now the department is providing most of their services through this app digitally.
And thank you. That number is actually now increased since the launch of the app in 2018. The KP Traffic Department has responded to 2.8 million queries through the app, and it has saved the government 161 days of government work. Now, that's real impact, right? And that's just one of 26 civic applications that our fellows have built in the last 5 years. They're trying to bridge the gap between government and citizens by actually creating solutions that are useful for citizens. We're also now working with the KP government and other partners to launch what will hopefully be Pakistan's first digital services unit. Ultimately, the goal is to introduce culture change to government. Our fellows learn a lot about civic hacking from the global community because Code for Pakistan is a part of Code for All, which is an international network of organizations that believes that digital technologies today open up new channels for citizens to engage in the public sphere in a way that can create real positive impact in their communities. There are 140 community groups all around the world that are working on civic tech. And by all of the work that these community groups are doing, we're bringing together this notion of civic engagement and civic hacking as us, citizens, being more than passive consumers. We can actually participate in making government work. We can do more than just use our voices to complain. We can use our hands to build solutions. As Jane Jacobs said, cities have the capability of providing something for everybody only because and only when they are created by everybody. That's participatory design. And as smart, engaged citizens and technologists, I hope you will use your skills for the civic good. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to me, but I really want to thank you all for leading with people, and thank you for listening.